Hey, what's going on YouTube? Welcome to another pre-season 7 League of Legends champion guide. Today we're going to cover mid lane Lux, and we're going to use her new Elementalist skin.
Tactical Decision Summoner.
For more of my content, you guys can visit my Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or my website. All of those links will be down in the video description. I've also started a new Discord, so if you have any questions, feel free to hop in and ask me whatever the hell you want, and you could also use it just to look for people for duo queue. Keep in mind, Twitter is where I do the Riot Point giveaways and do the votes for the next champion guide to come out, so that's definitely one you guys should check out. But now let's start our Lux guide by looking at our pros and cons. Lux is a champion that has multiple abilities that give her vision, which is great for checking bushes. She has a very long ultimate range, and she only has to roam partway up or down river to help either lane. She then has very strong poke with her Q and E, and provides great team utility with the shield from her W. She does have pretty decent crowd control considering she does have a snare and a slow, and she also now has Elementalist skin, which is probably the best one in the game, arguably anyways. Now Lux, however, is very skill shot dependent. Your Q, E, and ultimate are all skill shots, and if you're not landing them, obviously you're doing basically zero damage. You're then also a very squishy champion with no built-in escape, so positioning is extremely important. Now Lux of course has hard matchups just like everybody else, but honestly she does have more than most champions out there. Our abilities also have rather long cooldowns, but we do get a Morello Nomicon first to help with this, and of course we pick up 40% CDR at some point in the game. For your Masteries, you'll want to go 12 Ferocity and 18 Cunning, grabbing Thunderlord's Decree as your Keystone Mastery. It's a great way to add some extra damage into your combos, and as long as you can hit the enemy with an E and auto attack them, that will count as 3 attacks and proc Thunderlord's Decree. Deathfire could be a decent alternative, but considering how easy it is to get your Thunderlords off on the enemy, I would just advise sticking with Thunderlords. For your runes, you'll want to go Magic Penetration reds, Scaling Health yellows, a mix of Scaling Cooldown reduction and either Magic Resist or Ability Power blues, and Ability Power quints. Now in my normal full build, I only get 30% CDR, and that comes from a Zhonya's and a Morello Nomicon. If you were somebody that likes to go for an Abyssal Scepter or a Lich Bane, then you could skip that CDR and go for either Ability Power or Magic Resist instead as your blues. Lux has a lot of viable picks for her summoner spells, but you'll always have to grab Flash first. You don't have a reliable escape, and it can save you when you get caught out. You can also flash forward and snare a target for a kill. Ghost is my favorite pick for my second summoner spell because it's great for kiting, chasing, escaping, and you can use it for other things as well. Now if you need an even more defensive summoner, you could go Barrier because it does have a rather short cooldown and can save your life over and over throughout a game. Now Exhaust is a great pick for the same reasons, but I like to take it against bursty assassins like Zed so you can survive his all-in combo. Now if you're against something with a very reliable crowd control like Cassiopeia or Twisted Fate, then you could take Cleanse as well, but it's something I don't grab too often myself. I'm also not a big fan of Ignite because you do have very long ranges and you're usually not going to be even in the range to ignite somebody, but it is good against healing abusing champions like Swain or Mundo. Now let's kick off our abilities by starting with our passive, Illumination. Lux's offensive abilities mark all affected enemies with light energy for 6 seconds. Her basic attacks and final spark then consume the mark, dealing between 20 and 190 based on level plus 20% AP magic damage. So this ability is great for a couple reasons, and the first one is harassing and last hitting during the lane phase. You can first land your E ability on minions during the lane phase, so they do get this mark, and when you auto attack them, they will take a bunch more damage, making last hitting extremely easy. If you're then trying to harass the enemy champion, as long as you land your Q and E and land a basic attack, this will proc as well, and also proc your Thunderlord's Decree, since it will count as 3 attacks. Then finally, in your all-in combo, Final Spark also consumes this, so you don't even have to auto-attack to get off your full burst combo. It's a pretty damn solid passive if you ask me. Now let's move on to your Q ability, Light Binding. Lux releases a sphere of light in a line that deals magic damage to the first 2 enemies hit and roots them for 2 seconds. So this ability here is your way of holding an enemy in place so you can pull off your all-in combo. As long as you're able to land this, you can follow up with your E and your R ability to instantly burst the target. Keep in mind as well that this does hit the first 2 enemies, so you can have it go through a minion and hit the enemy champion from behind. It's a great way to catch them off guard. It does pretty decent damage, but not as much as our E ability, so we max this one second. So now let's look at that shielding ability, Prismatic Barrier. Lux shields herself and throws out her wand in a line, shielding allied champions in its path for 3 seconds. Lux's wand then returns to her, stacking the shield to all allied champions it passes through, as well as herself. So this isn't the strongest shield at the start since it only has a 20% AP ratio, but since it does stack when it comes back through, it does become rather large. You can also shoot it through your whole team, giving them all a shield, which is great against things like Karthus' ultimate to stop people from dying. It's a great ability, but we do want to increase our burst as much as possible, so we have to max this one last, since it doesn't do any damage at all. Now your last basic ability, which is also the one we max first, Lucent Singularity. Lux sends an anomaly of twisted light to the target area, slowing nearby enemy champions and granting sight of the area around it for 5 seconds. At the end of the duration, or if Lucent Singularity is activated again, the Singularity detonates, dealing magic damage to all enemies in the area. So the first thing to note about this is it does grant sight of the area, so it's a great way to check bushes when you are moving for ganks and whatnot, because you are very immobile, and if you do get caught out, you're pretty much dead. This, combined with an auto attack which will proc our passive, is our primary way of harassing the enemy champion, since it will proc Thunderlord's Decree and has a decent range as well. As I said, this is by far our best basic ability, so we have to max it first. Now, the ultimate, Final Spark. After gathering energy for 1 second, Lux fires a giant laser in a line that deals magic damage to all enemies hit, briefly revealing them as well as the surrounding area. So this has a pretty decent base between 300 and 500 plus 75% AP and a 3340 range. This ultimate is the reason Lux only has to go partway up or down river to actually help the lane if there is a fight by using her ultimate. As I've already said, this also procs your passive even without auto-attacking, so as long as you can land your Q, follow up with an E and R to instantly burst the target. It's also really nice as well because it does reveal the surrounding area, so you can see champions that are stealth as long as they are near the ultimate. For our skill order, we'll want to put a point into our ultimate whenever we can at 6, 11, and 16. Then we want to follow up with our E ability since it is great for harassing the enemy champion, and it's also great for clearing minion waves since it is an AoE. We then start maxing our Q because it is a really solid snare and it does do pretty decent damage, but the thing that makes it weaker than our E of course is the fact that it only hits 2 targets. Then of course we save our shielding ability W for last, as it is a shield and it doesn't do any damage. We do want to take a point in it at level 4 though, so we can actually shield ourselves or our allied champions. For Lux's combos we have 2 main ones, and we have the lane harass combo and the all-in combo. For our lane harassment combo, all we have to do is hit the enemy with a Lucent Singularity and then auto-attack them to proc Illumination. This will count as 3 hits and proc your Thunderlord's Decree. Now you can also begin the combo with a light binding and an auto-attack if you can land that snare. For our all-in combo, we first start by snaring the target with our light binding. We then want to hit the enemy with Lucent Singularity and instantly follow it up with a Final Spark. You'll want to have the Lucent Singularity under the enemy champion and activate it a second time while you're casting your Final Spark for a faster combo. Farming is the most important part of your lane phase because you'll need your core items to be able to 100 to 0 the enemy carries. Try not to push the minion wave, and you'll want to use your auto attacks to last hit the minions. If the enemy did back though, or you do need to push the minions away from your tower, then of course use your spells. Next, you'll want to try and harass the enemy out of lane, or just kill them. Make sure you're doing this between your last hits, and use your lane harass combo to effectively use your passive and Thunderlord's Decree. Now Lux does also make for a pretty decent roamer when you do have your Final Spark, so you'll want to look to help your other lanes. Roam after you push the mid lane wave, and then land your skill shots. Before a full out teamfight starts, you'll want to try to poke down the enemy with your Lucent Singularity so they start at low health. Try to hit as many targets with Final Spark as possible unless you can blow up a high kill priority target. If you have something like a Mumu or Galio on your team and they land a good ultimate, then combo your Final Spark on top. You'll then want to use your Prismatic Barrier to help your team survive. It's really strong against AoE damage like Karthus ultimate and can really increase your team's survivability. Finally, try to snare the enemy with light binding if possible, but you may want to hold onto it just so you can save it to peel for the carries on your team, or of course yourself. Now we're going to cover a few of your hard matchups, and first up is Galio. Against Galio, you'll want to try to harass him as much as possible in the early game. He'll become incredibly annoying later on when he starts getting a bunch of magic resist. Since you know he's going to go for magic resist items at some point, get your Void Staff earlier than usual. Just make sure you get your Morellonomicon first though, because of his Bulwark heal. Next here we have Aurelion Soul, and the early game shouldn't be too hard, so you'll want to harass him as much as possible and focus on last hitting as much as you can. Once he is level 6 though, you'll have to be a lot more careful, and usually you'll have to hang out around your turret. When he gets his Rylai's, you'll want to be even more careful because if he does catch you out, you won't be able to escape. If he unfortunately catches you out though, you'll want to go into melee range to reduce the damage from his stars. Now let's look at 2 more, and first this time we have Jace. Against Jace, you'll really need to dodge his Shock Blast. It does enormous damage when it's comboed with his Acceleration Gate, and it will destroy your health pool. Make sure you stay at a decent range because he will easily outtrade you if you are in melee range. Whenever you see him change stances, try to harass him as much as you can because it does have a 6-second cooldown. Now last here is Xerath, and you'll want to try to shut him down in the early game. He's not the strongest champion early on, but later when he has some items, he can delete you from a very, very long range. Don't sit near minions as well so he can hit you and push at the same time with Arcano Pulse. Yet again, stay at a decent range to avoid getting slowed by his Eye of Destruction or stunned by his Shocking Orb. Poke him and kill him early on. Keep in mind there are many other hard matchups for Lux, but these are definitely 4 of the hardest. Now for the last part, the item build. We'll want to start with a Doran's Ring, health potions, and a warding totem. If you're in a hard AD matchup, then you want to go for a Seeker's Arm Guard before you go for your core build. For that core build, we go for a Morellonomicon, Rabadon's Death Cap, and a Void Staff. If it's Romo Clock and we're spending a lot of time roaming or we are snowballing, then Luden's Echo is an excellent pickup. If I'm going for one, usually I'll get it right after the Morellonomicon. For our boot options, we first have Sork Shoes if you are looking for some early magic penetration, or Ionian Boots if we do need 10% CDR. For our item pool, we first have Magi's, which is a really solid pickup on Lux since we can pick up kills from a very long distance, so if you are getting some kills, consider getting a Magi's. We then have the Zonias, which is one of the items I get pretty much all of the time on Lux since it is a very, very good defensive activate and we are very immobile. If we need some magic resist, Abyssal is a solid pickup as well, and it does increase your damage by 10%, which works great on a bursty mage like Lux. If we're looking to add a bit more team utility, we could get an Athene's, which is also nice because it does have 20% CDR, but it's not something I pick up too much. I prefer full-on damage. Then if we do want a bit more of a health pool, we could get Rylai's Crystal Scepter, which makes us just a bit more durable. If you want even more burst than what Lux already brings, which honestly isn't necessary to be honest, you could get a Lichbane. Then finally, like always, the Guardian Angel, fantastic late game item since you do get some armor and magic resist and you can come back to life. So for my normal full build, I'll take that core, get those Sork Shoes, and then get a Zonias and a Guardian Angel. You're going to have an absolute ridiculous amount of damage, yet a good defensive from the Zonias, and coming back to life from the Guardian Angel, super solid. But if you want it to be even burstier and have some nice movement speed, you could go for the Luden's full build. You'll take your core yet again, but add that Luden's Echo right after the Morellonomicon, and then get the Zonias in the end. You're not going to have the Guardian Angel, which is a really solid defensive item, but you will have the Luden's Echo, which does a lot more damage, and you do get movement speed. It's a really solid full build as well, and these two here are definitely the most common ones I see on Lux. But that, ladies and gentlemen, covers everything I've got for this champion guide. Don't forget to check out the video description below if you do want to check out more of my content, and make sure you follow me on Twitter so you can enter those Riot Point giveaways and vote on the next champion guide to come out. Of course, feel free to hop in the new Discord, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. I'm glad to help anybody out. But other than that, thank you guys a ton for watching the guide, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Never meant to make your daughter cry. I apologize a trillion times. Sorry, Miss Jackson, but I am for real. Never meant to make your daughter cry. I apologize a trillion times.